Hey everyone, welcome to the 11th Commandment brought to you by Spook Nation. Brother Spook, tell me something good today, big guy.
Man, I tell you what, the sun's shining, going to get up to 70 today, and turkeys are gobbling and strutting, and season opens on Saturday. So,
Oh, it's this Saturday?
yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yep.
Well, good. I know I'm coming up in a few weeks and I cannot wait.
Yeah.
It's been a few years since we hunted together,
It
buddy, but this
has.
will be
It
a
has.
nice reunion. I think if people remember one of the previous podcasts we talked about, one of my first Eastern ever shot was with you, and you were on the ground with the holding a decoy, and what a cool hunt.
I loved that hunt. That's one of my hunts that stands out in my mind to this day. It's funny, those turkeys were gobbling out in front of us, and there was a particular place where they always crossed the driveway, and we got in there and it was kind of open. And I had that pretty boy decoy, and I got out there and I told you just to stand behind the tree,
Yeah, I
and I
did.
tell you when to draw, when to
Yep.
shoot. And they run down there. What was they, like 15 yards or something?
Oh, it was right on us, brother.
Yeah, I don't even
If I
remember.
didn't shoot, he was going to be on your head.
Yeah. And I said, get ready, draw your bow.
Yep. And we smoked him. It
Yeah,
was
it
such
was perfect. It couldn't. If you had just described the plan, you would have said, that ain't going to work." But it worked
exactly.
perfect.
It did. 9 times out of 10, it wouldn't, but that day it did, and I'll take it.
Yeah, it
Especially
was
with the
awesome.
bow and to do it with the
That
buddy.
was one of the most classic hunts. A lot of times, turkey hunts, you call them in, you shoot them with a shotgun. It's awesome, but it's kind of very similar to that is one I look back on saying, man, I wish we'd had somebody about 30 yards away videoing, because
For sure.
that was an epic hunt.
It was, brother. It was. Well, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. And, spring is obviously turkey season and a lot of things that are happening, but I know you take time this particular part of the year to plan out the next year. And part of that is, finding land. And we got some additional questions from, people that are listening. Again, thank you very much. And that's what I want to talk about today is, let's say you've got, a buck that somebody has called you about, or you've got a buck you've gotten on camera.
Mm-hmm.
How are you approaching just that whole interaction with the landowner or getting permission for that deer? And then we'll peel that onion back.
Yeah, so I get this question a lot, and it's understandably so, because it's kind of awkward just going up and knocking on somebody's door that you don't know at all, especially these days where people are so nervous about
Yeah.
people getting on their property and different things like that. I generally just try to really think it through. You know, for lack, I don't want to be like. Seem the wrong way about it, but really, it's a lot about your appearance. I think you should, you know, wear nice jeans and a nice shirt and be clean, and I don't generally go ask permission in my big 4-wheel drive truck. I drive, a different vehicle. I don't know. I just try not to do things that might seem intimidating to
Yep.
somebody, because you never know who's going to come to the door most of the time. You
Correct.
don't know if it's going to be 80-year-old lady or a 40-year-old guy. You just don't have any idea. So every situation's different. And so that's one of the things that I try to do. And then I just tell them, I say, I'm just I do a lot of hunting, and usually you can get permission easier if you're a bow hunter. Also, a lot of times that helps. And so, you say, hey, I'm looking for a place in this area. There's a particular deer that I've seen, or that a friend of mine has seen, and he either saw it on your property or the neighbor or somebody nearby, and that I'm looking for a place that I can hunt that particular buck. And would you be interested in working out some kind of arrangement to allow me to access your property and hunt? And you kind of start off that way. And a lot of times, the wording that you choose a lot of times is what helps create the curiosity.
Yeah.
If you just
I see
say,
that.
if you say, I'm just looking for a place to deer hunt, that generally doesn't go over that well anymore.
Okay.
You have to present yourself as a way that you're, you know, creating it look, or making it look like basically an opportunity to both of you. And you just say, is there anything I can do that would help you and to help me?
Yeah.
And a lot of times they'll just say, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm looking for a really good place to hunt this deer, and I really like your property. I think that I would have a good chance. I'm after one specific deer. I'm not looking to kill a bunch of deer or bring people. It's just going to be me. I might have a cameraman sometimes. A lot of times when that piques their curiosity also. So you get into that conversation
Yeah.
about that part of it. And then, uh, and I start off with that and see what their reaction is before I start, bringing up any kind of compensation in some way, and then if we get to that point, according to what their comeback is and how receptive they seem to, because I've had people to say, well, yeah, I don't care. A lot of times
Mhm.
people don't even hesitate. So you get permission pretty quick. And then a lot of times, probably more times than not, they're somewhat hesitant and they want to hear more about it. And then I usually lead into the fact of, for myself, I've been hunting all my life and I kind of just am looking for special opportunities at special deer. And I like to use the word special or unique or, different words like that. You'd be surprised how far that'll go, because if anybody that thinks they're a part of something special,
Yes. Absolutely.
it makes a difference. I'm just telling you. So if you present yourself professionally, I mean, hey, admittingly, I've taken Marty with me on many trips to ask permission, and especially if there's a dog or a cat in the driveway, Marty will get out and start petting the dog, and which can, you obviously got to make sure it's a nice dog, but almost always it is. And just different a lot of times the wife will come out and then she'll bring her husband to the door, and then Marty will get out and she'll start talking to the wife and I'll talk to the husband. And I can't tell you how many times that works really well, you know.
Okay.
And so um, those are just some of the things. And once we get in, sometimes of course, the landowner is going to say, well, I had people ask me about leasing and different things. And I said, well, I'm not really, if you want to call it lease, we could. I said, I'm really just looking for access to try to have an opportunity at this one particular deer. So whether you would want to call it a lease or a trespass fee, or just, I'm basically just giving you some compensation for allowing me to come onto your property and hunt this one particular deer. And when you present it that way, it sounds different.
Sure.
It sounds like to them that they're not giving up as much control or whatever as when you say the word lease.
Yeah.
And you don't think it should make that much difference, but it does.
Oh,
It does
I can
make a
see that.
difference. Yes. And so and obviously the more times you do it, the better you'll get at it. And
Yeah.
so don't beat yourself up if you get back in the truck and you say, dang it, man, I screwed that up.
Yeah.
Just go down to the next farm or the
Yeah. Yeah.
next
Yeah.
house and,
So
and so, yeah, you just, it's like anything else. The more you do it, it's just like doing these podcasts. The more we
yeah.
do it, the better it gets and the more fun it gets and the easier it gets. And that's the way this will be also.
No, that's great feedback. So let's say in the event that you've got some interest
Mhm.
and they say, well, what kind of compensation are you talking about? I doubt somebody's going to throw out a number. Maybe they do because they probably don't know. So where do you start to
Yep.
that
Yep.
conversation
So
without,
so obviously
getting over
that's
your head.
always the hardest part. What's the number? A lot of times it's got to do with how many acres you're trying to access. Uh, a lot of times if you're just trying to access, you know, 30, 40, 50 acres, a lot of times, I'll start out at somewhere around $1,000, just
Hmm.
to kind of break the ice and take the person's pulse and see where they're at. Obviously, the bigger the property, and another thing you got to have, it helps if you have a little bit of knowledge of is kind of what goes on around you. What has other properties leased for or rented for? Do you know anything about any of the properties around you and what somebody's paying? Obviously, could make a difference.
Yeah.
But if you don't know anything, you start out somewhere in that range. And when you're just talking about one deer, I keep reminding them, I said, listen, I'm just talking about one deer. So I'm not looking, if I kill that deer tomorrow, I'm gone and you may never see me again. You
Yeah.
know, I said, it's just one deer. So that makes a difference to them
Yeah.
that somebody's, and they'll say, well, what is it that you're wanting to do? I said, well, I would need to be able to come and go as I please. If you need me to let you know, I can shoot you a text or a call when I'm coming to hunt. Usually, what I'm doing, I'm watching the weather. I'm watching the trail cams. I'm not hunting every day, and a lot of times I live way off. If I do, I say, hey, I live 4 hours away or 6 hours away or whatever it is, and I say I'm just going to come in and hunt on the days. Usually, if I get him on trail camera, I would probably come in and hunt a day or two or evening and or two, and then if the weather is we have a front moves through and the temperature drops, I'd probably want to come in and hunt a day or two, but I would always let you know if you need
Yeah.
me to. And this is the vehicle I'll be driving, or I'll send you a picture of the truck I'm driving and you'll know that it's me. And I'm from Tennessee. I got Tennessee tag, whatever
Yeah. Yeah.
information that I feel makes them comfortable with the situation. And then and then you just go from there. Uh, and because when you're talking about one deer, it just sounds different to them. Now, if you're just trying to get permission to hunt, that's a little bit different, and you may want to approach it just a little bit different. And I have done that many times before, and you're doing the same thing. You're just accessing the situation, their mentality, their thoughts, what they are. And sometimes they'll say, well, I got a grandson that hunts. And I said, well, that's okay. Does he hunt very much? Well, no, he's probably only going to hunt juvenile hunt or something. I said, well,
Uh-huh.
I understand that. I'm not expecting you to tell your grandson you can't hunt. So you give and take a little bit in the process, because if you just say, well, nobody else can hunt, that may, and most of the time that doesn't happen unless it's with a family member.
Yep.
And then you just got to deal with that according to, and if they say, well, my son hunts and he's a big hunter and he's probably not going to go for it, you say, well, I understand. And if if something changes or whatever, here's my card, give me a shout and let me know. And you'd be surprised how many times somebody will call you and say, my son's having some problems and he's not going to get to hunt this year. So if you want to work something out, come back over and see me.
Yeah. No. Well, I can tell you regarding that. So when I lived in Georgia, and I have hunted it up till last year, and my boys hunted in that North Atlanta area where we were at, was same thing. I asked for permission for some property, and right next to it was my buddy Sean, and his
Mhm.
family owned some property and he had that permission. And so what I did, I just reached out to him and we had a conversation, and I said, hey, here's what I'm hoping to do, here's my intent. And it worked out where we ended up having a great relationship, became very good friends, and hunted that property together and did a lot with that property.
Yeah.
And so just because somebody else is hunting it, I think if you approach it of, hey, let's work together maybe,
Yeah.
and share work. I'll help you, and whatever, that goes a long way. And that turned into not only a great property in North suburban Atlanta, but a great friendship as well. So
Right.
you
And
never know.
that's exactly right. You never know. All you can do is keep working the situation and making, you know, presenting opportunities that could work out. I've even taken that person's grandson turkey hunting before,
Yeah.
or you're driving around the area and somebody's out putting up a mailbox, and you stop and help them. Say, "Can I help you? Do you need me to?" And you help them hold the mailbox while they're putting the dirt in, or concrete around, or whatever it is. It could be a million different things. I mean, I've had one guy. We was at an auction one time, and we were talking to an old man about his property, and he's like, "Well, I just wish I could find some. I can't. I have a hard time keeping my place bush hogged. I just ain't able to do it anymore." I said, "Well, and I know this is not something that everybody can do, but I was in a position to be able to say, 'Hey, I'll bush hog your farm for you for the hunting rights.'" And he just lit up, and so I bush hogged his farm. Actually, me and my brother-in-law bush hogged his farm every year for deer and turkey hunting rights. And we had
You know what I would do if you got that offer? Hey, I'd hire somebody, even if it
you
cost you
could, yeah,
five
you
hundred
could.
bucks.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Even
could
if you
hire
got to
somebody to
hire,
go do
even if
that
you
for
got
you
to hire a guy and it costs you $1,000,
all day.
it's yeah. And we had another guy one time that said, everybody comes down here wanting to hunt. Nobody wants to do anything for it. We said, well, and I knew the guy really well. And I said, well, what do you need? He said, well, I need some help picking up my hay. I said, okay, we'll do that. And he just like, really? It's
Yeah.
like, yes, sir. And
Yeah.
so, we would, of course, that's back in the day when I still felt like picking up hay in at 90 degrees. Nowadays, I'd try to go out and hire me 4 or 5 high school boys. But
Yep. No, I hear you.
either way, and we had those two farms. There is no telling how many turkeys we killed off those two farms. I
Yeah.
mean, they were both fantastic, and we got them. Didn't cost us anything out of our pocket other than just some work.
Some work.
And so it was awesome. And then my brother-in-law actually deer hunted the one farm a lot, and he killed some good deer there over the years. But um, yeah, there's so many things that go into it. I can tell you that I've gone up to people that other people told me there's no way you'll ever lease it, you'll ever buy it, you'll ever anything. He won't even talk to you. I pulled up in the guy's yard. He was out working in the barn lot, and I started talking. I introduced myself, and I own a property next to him, and we stood there for 2 hours just talking about farming, cows, very little about hunting. He wasn't a hunter. Talked about family, and of course I used to have cows. We used to run a lot of cows. I've done plenty of farming, and I'd ask him questions that allowed him to know that I had knowledge of the topics,
Yeah.
and told him about some of my situations. And always threw in, I never missed an opportunity to throw in a little thing. It's like, yeah, I love to farm. I said, most of the farming I do is for deer and turkeys, but I said, I won in 1981. I was the Tennessee's future farmer of the state.
Yep.
Most people
Always some
wouldn't even know
FFA
that
boy.
about me.
Yeah.
When I was in FFA in ag
Yeah.
class in high school, and was a champion soil judge or a champion, you
Okay.
know, hay judge. I used to enter like 10 different species of hay every year in the county fair. I did land measuring. I was the regional champion in land measuring. Just things like
Mhm.
that, and won future farmer of the year one year. And so
Okay.
you just say those little things like, "Oh, okay, well,
Yeah.
he ain't no dumb A from Wichita, you know.
No, look, you're
Y-
providing credibility.
yeah.
You are aligning yourself to the other person, and it's just not all about me. I want, and you're building a little bit of a relationship. So I love that story. Have you ever utilized previous successes in this? So, for example, you go and you're talking to this person, and if somebody's a little reluctant, you say, "Well, I've been able to successfully hunt other properties, just so here, and here, no issues. Have actually built relationships with these people, or I'm invited back, if I
Uh,
ever want to go, to just show a little bit of history that you've
well,
done this before."
for sure, if you know anybody in the area, or you've hunted on another neighbor, and of course, and I'll go back to that story I was just telling. It also helped that I owned a farm that joined him, and I was his neighbor.
Yep.
And then by the time I left, when I went to talk to him, I had a check and a contract in my hand, and I
Oh, wow.
handed it to you. And I said, "Is this something you would be interested in? Here it is." I said, "It's just me." I said, "I'm not an outfitter. I'm after one deer, and if I kill that deer, this is yours." You know. And I said, "The only thing that I might ask, and if you don't want to, I understand." I said, I said, "My dad has a gun tag. If there was an opportunity to bring my dad, he's older and hunt a few days in gun season." And he said, "Oh no, that wouldn't be a problem." And I actually had that place I spent it cost me a 2 hour conversation. And
Wow.
on a place that I had 10 people tell me I'd never be able to set foot on.
That's
But it took
beautiful.
me
I
2
love it.
hours.
Love it.
But
Have you ever gone back?
back to your other,
Okay.
excuse me, question. If you can say, "Yeah, I've hunted down the road on, Miss Sally Mae Johnson, and she told me that, you had a good place, and that you might let me hunt." "Oh, you know Miss Sally Mae?" "Yes, sir. Yes,
Hmm.
sir." "Well, okay." That
Yeah.
kind of stuff always uh, makes a difference.
Yeah.
And if you have, and it's kind of like that way with anything, with business or anything. If you have two people that or one person but they know each other, and you can use that it goes a long ways. And so anything like that you can do will help. And even you could even go to one place and say, "Well, they said that they had somebody hunting, but they suggested that I come talk to you." you know
Yeah.
and it kind of like puts a little bit of pressure on them and puts them on the spot just a little bit, because they're,
Okay. Yeah.
but and it may not work, but it might. So,
Okay. No, I love it. So, have you had a scenario where you were told no and then went back again, maybe a year later, when you knew this property was just, and it may not have been a particular deer, but the genetics, there are big deer in there, and you've been told no, but you try again? And if you have, what was your approach differently? Or,
yes, I've done that a lot of times, and a lot of times it's just, "Hey, I talked to you last year, and I know wasn't really up for it, and I just wanted to let you know that I still have a serious interest, and if there's anything I can do for you to help you feel more comfortable with me and what I'm asking for, I would still love to be able to, hunt your property some." And uh, you'd be amazed that when you present it like that, it just, I don't know, it's just something that triggers an interesting kind of inquisitive response
Mhm.
from them. Because a lot of times, if you can ever get them to asking you the questions,
Yeah.
if you can get them to ask you a question and you can answer it and you have a good answer, and then they'll ask you another question. A lot of times that's what it takes. Just to, I've sent them Christmas cards and happy anniversary,
Brother. You
everything you
just
can
said that.
imagine.
There was this little place in North Georgia, and it was just a little block of woods connected to a bigger block of
Yeah,
woods. And I knocked on the door, and it was this old couple, and they were sweet but a little reluctant. They didn't say no, so it was during the holidays. I brought them Christmas cookies and offered to help around the house,
yeah,
and it was a husband and wife, and that was it, baby. The cookies, and I was very sincere and offered to help around the house, but it was just that gesture of coming back,
exactly.
respectful,
Yeah,
offering something, and a gesture of cookies, and to do some work, and
exactly.
I got permission.
It's just like, so elderly couples are more actually apt to give you permission when you, just like, let's just say you pull up in an elderly couple's, or just an individual, elderly individual, and they've got a big limb laying in their yard. You say, hey, I can get that limb out of your yard for you. I think I can't get it. It's too big for me. I said, well, I said, where you want me to put it? Just drag the limb out of their yard. You'll get
Yeah.
permission so fast. I mean, it can be the smallest thing, trash in the yard, just whatever it is, the mailbox has been over. Uh, just look for things to be helpful, and as a way to let them know that, you're the only one wanting anything, or the only thing you want to do is hunt. You're not really interested in doing anything else to
Yep.
get permission.
Yep. Nope.
So yeah,
So
anything like that makes a difference.
look, I totally agree. So let's shift gears now. Let's
Mhm.
say you got access. So you had mentioned earlier about a contract, and what do you put in that contract? What do you put in that document to protect you? And then obviously for them, they want something that protects them from a liability standpoint. So what are some things that you put in that, and how do you have an attorney do it for you? Like, what is your approach
You
to that?
can. So a lot of times that has to do with the particular landowner. And so if I have a contract or just, a document, it's usually just said, not holding the landowner responsible for any possible injury at all. If there's some financial compensation, you put that down so that they feel comfortable with knowing they have something in writing. And then a lot of times, I like to put in what I need as far as access to the property, and then any stipulation that they have that you put down. Let's just say they want you to call them, or they want you to park in a particular spot, or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. You put that down so that it's just when they can read it and see it and something tangible, they feel more comfortable with it. So basically, you're just documenting the terms of the agreement. And of course, I like to be able to have in there that I can access it anytime I want to, and that I'm basically just after one particular deer, assuming that that's the situation. Now, if it's just a hunt, obviously you don't have to
Yeah.
put that, but uh, anything that you can put in there that you're doing, that they want, that makes them feel better. And
Do you add anything in there that says while you're hunting that nobody else can also?
yeah, so basically what you do is you say, for exclusive hunting rights or exclusive access. I like to use access for hunting rather than saying hunting rights.
Yep.
I just say, access for deer hunting or turkey hunting or whatever it is, and draw it up. So a lot of times this stuff just kind of comes to me as I'm writing it out, of how I want to word it based on how my conversation has gone with them, and what they've asked for, or what I think they may expect or be happy with. Sometimes you'll give it to them and they'll read it and they'll say, well, this is good, but can you, what about this? Or what, can you add this or whatever? And so then you may have to
Yeah.
add something for the verbiage to sound like what makes them comfortable.
No, and I look, I would just recommend, if it were me, I would at least put something in there, like you said, exclusive access. So that way, who knows, somebody comes the day after you're there and
Yeah.
they're like, hey, I just gave this other guy permission. Sure, I'll give you permission. And they do a contract. And now, if you can avoid that by getting that verbiage,
Yes,
then
yeah,
that's
yeah,
great.
yes, that's absolutely right. That's, you know, you don't want to get in a situation where somebody sees your truck there, sees you coming out or whatever, and then they try to slide in there
Yeah.
and do something and a lot of times if I can and it works out, and it doesn't always work out. A lot of times I like to find a place that I can park my truck where nobody can see it,
Yeah.
or I like to have Marty or somebody drop
Drop
me
you off.
off
Yeah.
because people are just so,
No, I know.
yeah.
There's haters out there,
Yeah,
and
oh,
they,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they can
yeah. I
create
mean,
problems.
even a
So,
neighbor will get mad at another neighbor for
yep.
allowing somebody to hunt, and
Oh, for sure.
so yeah, that's those kind. I just try to stay as low key and as indiscreet as
Yep.
possible, and even sometimes, I mean, according to the situation, uh, I can't tell you how many times I've known guys that get permission to hunt somewhere, and they kill something, and they go show it to landowner, and all of a sudden the landowner don't want them hunting anymore. Now, obviously, that doesn't happen most of the time when you're talking about a specific deer. But if you're just talking
Yeah.
about hunting in general, I think sometimes they don't really expect you to be successful or expect that you're going to actually hunt and take advantage of it and actually kill something. And I've lost a few opportunities because I was too successful.
Okay.
They didn't like it because I killed a big buck 2 years in a row or
Mhm.
something like that. And I got, I got, I've gotten shoved out of a couple of things that way, a couple opportunities that way because
Because you actually did what you
I did
went
what
there
I
to
was in
do.
there to do, which is just crazy to me, but
God forbid that.
I know, right?
All right, let's dial it back. So these are, areas that you can drive around, you can see property, and we've all done that. And we've driven around and saw a piece of property that we just were drooling and would say, "Man, I'd love to have access to that." What about the other scenario where you do a lot of connecting of people that connect with you?
Mhm.
You're obviously at a stage in your career where people reach out to you. Let's go back 20 years
Mhm.
and you have somebody that maybe they have some resources and they don't want to necessarily do just guided hunts, but they want to start finding some properties where they can get access to and make connections.
Mhm.
How would you recommend, or if you were to do it again, you start making connections so you let people know that you're interested in shooting a big buck, and this is very much a focus for you? How would you go about doing that? And again, with the social media today that you maybe didn't have when you first started.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously social media makes it somewhat easier, even though I don't really use it for that very much. But admittingly for me, things kind of unplanned and unintentional kind of happened on its own. It's like killing the big buck in Kansas
Yeah.
years ago, and it got so much hoopla over the video and the my joy and excitement of the hunt. And I always keep him right here close so I can pet on him. He's right here beside me. Uh, that admittingly that particular deer, I just gained so much respect and so many more contacts out of people that saw how uh, passionate I was about what I'm doing. But really, in today's world, I think it's just about talking to as many people as you can, making contacts, driving around, knocking on doors, going to shows, talking to people, and, you know, you can set up an enormous network of hunters on your own on social media.
Yeah.
And I tell guys all the time. I mean, every week, there's rarely ever a week goes by that I'm not in a conversation with somebody in some way about um, trying to gain access to something. And I just tell them, I say, if there's something that you ever find out about or know about or come across that you can't do yourself or you're not interested in yourself, I would love to at least know about it. I may or may not can do it either, but I'd like to know about it. And I'm telling you, I get so many people that come back to me, calls and texts and emails and messages on social media just from that alone. It's amazing. And that's really just what it's about. I mean, just relationships, contacts, meeting more and more and more people and knocking on doors and just being relentless. And I mean, it's all about what you're willing to put into it. It's just like anything else in life. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. I don't care what it is. And
it doesn't happen overnight. You got to be consistent, and it takes time. But I love that point you're making. Is it's relentless. You have a relentless passion and focus on finding big deer, and it takes time.
It does. It does. And I mean, you know, a lot of the people is like, oh, I don't see how any way you can, you know, pull this off or do this or whatever. Well, it's been over. I think it's hard for people to comprehend. I've been doing it for over 30 years. Yeah. And I mean, really, truthfully, closer to 40 years. Yeah. And so when you've done it that long, and another thing that really helps is when people find out that you'll do what you say you'll do and that you're honorable and that you're respectful to the property and you always close the gate and you pick up somebody else's cans and trash and, you know, you help them, you know, because the more times you go on and off of a guy's property, the more opportunities you're going to have to do something for them. It could be a cow's out and you stop and tell them, say, hey, you got a calf out over here. I'll help you get it in. Whatever the situation is, and you know how these farmers are, they talk to each other and, you know, it's networking. It's just network.
And it's looking for opportunities to help. Exactly. You just said about the cow, you said about the tree. And that's one of the things that, you know, and that's how we were raised. And I think most people have that intent, but I would just encourage, you know, rather than just you want to go and hunt, you're tired, you've been grinding, you do all of that, and the last thing you may want to do is do some chores after, you know, 4 days of hunting or whatever. But you got to look for opportunities to build value and to build that relationship, so that way, because the thing I love about particular property, Spook, most of the time, if it's got good deer this year, it's going to have good deer next year, and it's going to have good deer the year after.
Exactly.
So it's a piece of property you want to have not just access that time and that year, that season, but it's year after year. I'm saying, and a lot of times you got to get invited to get back for that. Go ahead. Do you need it?
No, I got something come up on the computer. I got Marty looking at it.
Go ahead. If you want to take we can take a pause real quick. Go ahead.
What's it say?
Device struggling to record.
Are you having any problem seeing or anything, Brian?
You're going in and out of blurry a little bit. I had to pick up something.
I don't know.
I mean, I can see.
Yeah, it just says it's having trouble recording. I couldn't see it. It came up, device struggling to record this.
No, it's. I mean, it's going.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we're still going.
Yeah. All right. I think we're good.
Okay. All right. I'll make that. Yes. Good. Okay. The other thing with that, Spook, is usually that property that is good this year that you want to get access to, that has a good deer, it's going to be good the next year. It's going to be good the year after. So again, it's that opportunity to look for, opportunities and situations where you can do something for that landowner to show value and that you appreciate access, so you get invited back year over year.
Exactly. And it may just be as simple as you go hunting this morning and you come out and he's out in the barn lot doing something or in the yard or whatever, and you just stop just to say hi.
Yeah.
Pull in, say, hey, how's it going? Just checking in. Y'all doing okay? Just sit and talk for a few minutes, and that's it. It could be
Thank them for everything.
exactly. And so it could be dropping off a batch of cookies. It could be giving them some venison or turkey breast or whatever. I mean, at least offering.
Yep.
And so, nobody's going to turn down homemade cookies. I'm just saying.
No.
But they may not necessarily want the deer meat or the turkey meat, but they ain't turning down cookies. So,
No, absolutely.
it may be a apple pie or pecan pie or whatever. It doesn't have to be a lot. It just has to be a gesture of appreciation. And sometimes the landowner wants to be involved in the process.
Yep.
They want you to back the truck up to the garage and they want to come out and see it and see that you're videoing it and be a part of the celebration. And it's like with Shaq, when I killed Shaq in Crofton, Kentucky years ago. Of course, I was hunting with a buddy that was starting an outfitting business, and we went to his place. And by the time within 45 minutes, there was 50 family members there. It was just like a big, gigantic party. But he wanted that experience. And so we gave it to him, and we've been really good friends ever since, because we talk all the time. He calls me all the time and he helps me find other big deer. He knows a ton of people. He goes to all the shows. He goes to Harrisburg and NWTF and a lot of different shows. So he knows a ton of people also. And so when you establish that kind of relationship with a person, and that relationship came from another guy that I knew from Ohio that is actually who hooked us up, so that's when things really start falling into place, is when you make so many connections. So I have an opportunity right now, and I'll tell you about later. A guy called me from Saskatchewan.
Okay.
And he said, this is something I'm putting together. There's an opportunity here. I've asked a lot of people and said, I talked to a guy and he said, and this guy was in Idaho. I don't even know who the guy is that he asked. Okay. He said, you just need to call Spook Span. Said, he's the only one I know that would be interested in something of this magnitude.
Yeah. Well,
I don't even know. I didn't know either one of them.
Okay. Look, you're doing something right when you have that happening and that you're on the right track.
Exactly. And that's what's crazy. I never thought in a million years I'd ever live to see the day when people would be calling me, offering me opportunities at a property or a chance at a particular deer or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of times so many people want to say, oh, it's all about money. You got money to throw towards it and blah, 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 blah. Well, it's really not. Yeah. Sometimes you have to spend some money to get access. You have to buy a plane ticket. You have to buy fuel. You have to, buy the license. There's, things.
Sure.
It costs money to just live, period, but the deer has no idea how much money you spent, whether you spent any money or not. It's still the same challenges. And the deer doesn't live on one guy's 100 acres that you got access to. He's all over the place. He could be 3 miles away. You don't know where he's at, when he's gone. Well, it just drives me insane that people think just because you gain access to a particular piece of property, you're just automatically going to kill the deer.
No, absolutely. It
work like that at all.
No, I know, buddy. I know. And we've talked about that. So speaking of killing the deer, so, okay, we've gotten access We've developed, some kind of written documentation. We're doing things to, bring value to that landowner. And now it's time to approach that property. So let's talk about in this last part of the podcast is, your first time on the property. Are you looking at a map? Are you, you're going to want to get cameras out. Ideally you have advanced time before the season starts. What's your approach to that property?
So a lot of times the first approach is talking to the landowner.
Okay.
Have they seen this deer, especially if you might have a picture of it? If you don't, you just say, hey, have you seen any big bucks, or do you see a lot of deer? Where do you see them at? Is it on a farm, or is it on just a particular piece of just raw property? Most of the time when you're talking to farmers who's probably 80 or 90% who I'm dealing with most of the time, most farmers have hunted some in their life. They see deer all the time. A lot of times they don't pay much attention to they don't think anything's registering to them, but when you start questioning them, they're like, yeah, I always see them over here, or I always see them over there. Or when the greens are being green, when the beans are green, I see them over here, or I see most of the deer over here, just different things like that. So you can get as much or more information from the landowner as you can anybody, which obviously will get you started. And then you obviously are looking at maps. You can look at OnX and different things. A lot of times before you go to ask permission, you've got some general idea.
This is true.
Of what's going on. A lot of times it has to do with the size of the property. There's been different times when I've actually had, run into a game warden and ask him questions, it could be so many different things, but let's just say it's raw. Let's just say you heard a rumor that you actually believed, that you put some faith in it. You went and got permission. You've never been on the property before. A lot of it's just looking for what are there any crops at all available? Is there a alfalfa field, clover field, anything like that that's possible? Can you feed in that? Is it a state that you can legally feed and put a camera up? And so sometimes that's the case. If you're in Ohio, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Kansas, states that you can feed, then you try to just visually pick out something that you think looks like the kind of place a big buck would come into. Could be a CRP field. It could be a edge of a cedar thicket. So many things. And then, you do your setup and you put your feed out and your cameras up and you just see what happens. In the meantime, and sometimes you may want to just walk the property according to what time of the year it is. I mean, I've had some things that weren't coming together like I thought they should. And matter of fact, whiplash right here behind me, we just were not getting it done. We got some pictures early season, or right before season open. I actually had a picture of him with velvet hanging off, and then didn't get another picture for weeks.
Wow.
And I told JD, I was like, I'm gonna have to go scout. I was like, what we're doing is not working. And this was in Ohio, and we had a couple places that we were feeding with cameras, and we just weren't getting him on camera anymore. And so I went, there was a big area that the timber had been cut years prior. So they were calling for rain one day. So we slept in, and about 10 o'clock, I put my rain suit on. I just went walking, scouting.
Yep.
And I found a place where there were 3 points that ran off into a hollow, and there was 2 old logging roads that came together into another one that basically formed a Y. And I found 3 or 4 big rubs and 3 or 4 big scrapes right in that intersection. So I had a point coming down kind of in the middle, and I had 2 points coming down like this. And it was about 3 or 400 yards off of a bean and cornfield. And I felt like that's probably what the problem was. It may have been even further than that, 500 or 600 yards. I felt like I was probably hunting too close to the crop fields, and he just wasn't getting out there early enough, and there was still enough crops for him to eat on that he wasn't coming into the corn. So we moved our setup back. There was a great place there for a big ladder, a tall ladder stand, and a camera set, lock on. I pulled up some cedar limbs and things up and camoed us up really good, put the camera up, and came home. Just left it.
Yeah.
Within 5 days, I had a picture of him.
Love it.
Within a couple of days later, got another picture. By the end of October, we were getting a picture of him about every 3 days.
Okay.
And then Halloween, we were going to have which was my birthday. We were going to have this awesome moon. The weather was going to be awesome. And I was like, oh no. And Marty had me a big special birthday plan. We went and stayed in Nashville. So I was DOA on being able to hunt Halloween. Of course, you know what happened.
Yep.
We checked. So I left the next morning on November 1st, and we drove up there. I went right in there, and I had somebody else checking the camera occasionally because we didn't have cell cameras then.
Yeah.
And I went in there and pulled the card, and he had been in there. He came in on Halloween afternoon at 4:00, which I was sick that I wasn't there, but I was happy because I was like, we're fixing to kill this.
He's coming back.
Yeah. And so we had 3 epic encounters with him before I killed him. And I think I ended up killing him on November 7th. But during the course of this time, we had we were in a really good spot, and we had created a little magnet area. Just had deer really using that spot a lot. And I had taken Antler Grow, which is a product that people need to really.
I need to start using it.
Yeah,
you talk about it all the time. I'm going to start using it.
It's phenomenal. It drives me crazy that people say, well, what do you do? What are the things you do? And then I tell them, and then they don't do it. I'm just like, it makes such a difference. And it was one of the funniest things. I got to tell this story. One of the first times we ever used it. Well, actually, this was one of the first times. I'll tell about the other instance here in a minute.
Okay.
So going back to when I told you we did that setup and we just left, one of the things I did, I had Antler Grow in a backpack sprayer. So I sprayed honeysuckles, briars, vegetation, just, all around the area. Put out corn with corn coat from Khmer deer, which a lot of people don't believe in. I've had tremendous luck out of it. And so we had it all fixed up. When we came back, I don't know, I can't remember exactly, maybe a week later, I'm telling you, it looked like you had sprayed the area with Roundup.
They just crushed it.
Everything that I had sprayed was gone. They had eaten it, and I mean, they annihilated it. And so, and then another time, well, so it's funny when I did that, JD's like, aren't you scared? Because we had just started using Antler Grow at the time. So we still didn't really know how
good it was,
how good it would be.
Yeah.
And what Antler Grow is, it's actually a fertilizer. It enhances growth, but it's got, I don't know whether it's copper. I think it's copper or a couple things in it that make the leaf taste better to a deer. And of course, deer are seeking out the most nutritious thing they can find. So if you spray an area with this and it soaks into the leaf and to the plant, then it immediately becomes more nutritious.
Correct.
Per the concept. The awesome thing about it is you can use it in any state because it is a fertilizer. It's not a bait or a feed or anything like that. It's just a natural enhancement on a plant. But anyways, so JD's like, man, aren't you scared? So we had another deer, another spot, another situation that we were using. I just went in and we were going to hunt that evening. I went in, just sprayed everything. He's like, man, aren't you scared this is going to mess it up, or, that's going to be so new to them, they're going to freak out. And I was like, man, we got to start using it sometime. I was like,
Yep.
we just got to like see what happens. I just want to see when a deer comes
Sure.
in and he smells it, does he freak out and run off, or does he get curious? What's he do? So that evening, it was so epic. Where I'm going with this, here comes a nice
Oh, yeah.
buck. I mean, a buck
Yep.
that most people would
Oh, I remember.
love to shoot,
Yep.
comes in, and he's he comes up and he eats some corn, and he gets to sniffing, and he sniffs right up, and all of a sudden gets his nose up there, and he licks it a little bit, and then he starts eating it, and I can hear JD's in my ear right here. He goes, "That's awesome." And that deer started eating. And
Yeah.
where I messed up is I got a little carried away, and I sprayed it ended up spraying it under the stand and everything. He walked all the way up under the stand and was eating right under us, so close JD couldn't even hardly video it.
Film him. Yeah.
And JD that night, he's like, man, that was awesome. I can't believe that you just put that on there. And so it's just one of those things that I've seen work many times. But
well, I also believe so. The more the deer are in there eating, other deer smell that other deer in that area. So it's it feels safe. They know it's something that's bringing them there. So I believe that plays a role too.
Yeah, I'm trying to create a restaurant community center atmosphere.
Absolutely.
Mock scrapes, feed, and whatever you can do to enhance this area. And I don't like pouring, I mean, I know feeding deer or baiting is, a lot of people hate it. A lot of people don't think it's fair hunting. People that can do it love it. If it's in a state where you can do it, I think it's awesome. I think it's great.
Absolutely.
And I don't just put my stuff in a pile. I create like a food plot. I just put it out over, maybe 15 or 20 different spots in the areas where I can shoot, and then I'll put out.
It's good. And that's good too, Spook, because you're going to have hopefully multiple deer in there so they can all graze. They're not fighting over one or two piles of feed. So you can have multiple deer that have an opportunity to
exactly.
come
a
into
big
the area.
Buck really doesn't like coming into a concentrated spot.
Correct.
Where there's does and fawns and little bucks, and sometimes he does, but a lot of times they don't. They had rather ease in there, and if they can look around as they're coming in, and they see a doe over here and a doe and a fawn over here and a little buck over there, and everybody's kind of spread out and relaxed, and then he can walk up over here and get a nibble without even having to deal with.
He can choose where he wants to eat.
Exactly. And and a lot of times the really big ones, and Whiplash was like this. A lot of times he just would stand on the outskirts and watch. And he wouldn't even come in. And he did that to us on 2 different occasions. But what was interesting, on the day that we killed him, the evening we killed him, we saw him that morning. He came by us and he chased after a doe that had been in there under us. And that afternoon, so that day, I had put out a big mock scrape. I'd actually cut an evergreen limb off of another tree, took a screw-in step, screwed it to a tree, took one of those. It's basically a flexible wire, and I just wired the limb to the screw-in step. I did a big scrape. I had fresh doe and estrus urine, so I doctored it all up. Well, there was a little buck in that scrape just going crazy, just raking his face, pawing, sniffing, peeing, everything. Well, here come a doe, and I told JD, I was like, man, I swear it looked, because that doe that he chasing that morning was kind of a small doe for this area.
Okay.
It wasn't a big old doe. It was just a small, I think it was just a 1.5-year-old doe. And she came in. I was like, man, I swear, on the same trail that they left out on that morning.
Okay.
And so here she comes, and she walks up there and starts eating. Well, sure enough, here he comes. It is the same doe, and he's still with her. He stands about 45 yards facing us in a little patch of honeysuckles, and all you can see is his throat patch and his head and his horns. And he's just standing there staring at her the whole time. And he is not going to come in. He look over at that little buck, and that little buck's still raking and carrying on, but he ain't giving him no credit because he's not even trying. He's not approaching the doe at all. He's seen the big one. He's not even trying. All of a sudden, I can just hear crunch, 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 crunch. And you can just tell that steady, heavy buck walk, that rut walk, you can just tell that's what it is. It's on a mission walk.
Yep.
Does don't walk like this, it's
Correct.
just, but it's coming to my off my back left shoulder, and he's right here, and I'm just staring him down, just like, man, I can't believe this deer's not going to come in. When of course, you can see his posture change some when he sees that other buck. To this day, I don't know what that other buck was. I just know it was a buck. I just know it had to be a fairly good sized buck. It was behind JD also. He couldn't see it. And when I heard that deer stop really close to me to my left, and when he did, Whiplash's eyes just rolled back in his head, and I saw all the hair just go dark, and he just did like this, and he just started stiff-legging up there, and I shot him at 15 yards.
Oh, my God. Love it.
And so I created a restaurant community center with feed and scrapes and the different things in a 1/4-acre spot, the antler grow and all the things that we did there. And deer the whole time over maybe a 3-week period, we were just getting more deer on camera. They were eating up the feed faster. You just
getting comfortable. Yep.
Exactly. And so he was checking that area out as, fairly regular. We had, like I said, 3 encounters with him before we killed him. And so it was awesome.
That's such a great story. Well, that's a beautiful way to end things today. So let's just recap a little bit. I mean, we talked, and I think people are going to love this podcast, as you talked about how to get access in a variety of different ways. When you get access, what are some of the legalities, if you will, the permission and the liability aspect of it? Bring in value, looking for opportunities, right, to, help out and not just hunt. And then the approach to the property when you do get access to it. And, sometimes it's going to be raw. Sometimes you have a little bit of intel. But the one thing I love is whether it's a farmer you're asking or, even in some of these suburban areas, right, you ask the landowner and they'll tell you, yeah, I see that buck. They may not know the caliber of that deer, but they can describe and say, yeah, I see that buck and know. And so that's good intel. Great information. And we're going to, continue to jump into this topic because I think it's important to, share your expertise and insights on, we all want to hunt, but getting access to those special properties is not easy. But when you do, man, it can pay off big. So
absolutely. Brother. And another thing I would like to leave off too.
Yeah.
You can take a property that might not be the place you really want to be. It might be a mile from where you really want to be.
Okay.
If you can enhance that property and make it better, and it could become a really, really good spot. So that's might be another topic for another day, but
I think so. I love that.
Yeah.
Because those deer are going to travel and exactly. I think that's a great topic and we can, because that's probably a reality more than not is getting access adjacent.
It's a whole nother conversation. It's more likely that's going to be the case. And so you can't get discouraged. You got to be encouraged and you got to do what you can do to make that spot better. And then you'd be surprised what'll happen.
Love it. Well, Spook, again, thank you very much, and thank everybody
Hey, thank
for
you,
the
buddy.
continued support
Yeah.
and tuning into the 11th commandment. We got, a lot more deer stories to come, and I think we've got a special podcast coming up that we're going to be inviting Miss Span on the podcast, and she's going to tell
Oh
some
my
stories
goodness.
of over the years that Spook, buckle up, buddy, because no telling what's going to be coming out of her
Man, I'm
mouth.
gonna have to wear a football helmet to that one.
That's going to be fun for me. So, again, everybody, God bless and thank you for the support. And just again, wish you the best, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks everybody so much for listening. And thank you, Brian, for being my sidekick in all this. I got to have somebody keep me in line. So I appreciate
That's
it.
it, brother. Will do, man.
See ya.
All right, everybody, take care.